Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new series, Tansson Talks TV. This is a show where we're going to go ahead and just discuss some of our favorite episodes of television, past and present, and maybe even the future. And so, with this is just such a great venture, and for myself as a media studies student, I'm so excited to get into this. But of course, I'm very happy to have my mother here with me, joining in on the fun.
Hi, Brandon.
So I'm excited to be doing this with you.
I'm really excited to be doing this with you also.
Are you able to tell the viewers what they can expect for this episode and which episode we are going?
Yes, I'd love to. Brandon and I have watched a lot of TV in our time. Um, I I'm the one who kind of introduced Brandon to some of the older TV shows that are out there. Um, Throughout my time when I was younger, I did live overseas, and during the time period overseas, there was only one TV station, and so while I was overseas, you kind of begin to enjoy a variety of TV shows just because there's only that one station to choose from. And so I introduced Brandon to some of the shows that he, of course, at his age would not be familiar with. And so we have grown to begin watching these shows together and spending a lot of time doing that. And so for this particular episode, we're going to kind of look at Silver Spoons and generally the premiere episode of Silver Spoons.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited to get into this one. And so this is episode one, pilot from 1982. Yeah, so are you able to go ahead and start us off with the brief summary of this episode?
Okay, sure will. In this particular episode, Ricky is introduced to his father, Edward. Um, Edward does not have any idea that he has any children at all. Ricky rings the doorbell, and he just kind of introduces himself as his son. The subplot in this is that Edward does find out that he does not have any money. It no longer have any money. Just to give you a little background, also Edward is very rich, and he grew up, quote unquote, with a silver spoon.
Yeah, so that's overall a great summary. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so with this episode, we are, of course, introduced to the overall premise of the show, which is, that they have a silver spoon, in which that practically, just means that they start off with money, they will always have money, and yeah, so because of this, in part, the dad on the show, Edward, he, very much has not really grown up in the sense that he feels like he was never really able to, I guess, fulfill his childhood dream, so to speak, and he just sort of lives it, where he hasn't really grown up or matured. He's just sort of stayed put as a toy manufacturer, or rather distributor, and that's just his job. He just you know goes through this, but he doesn't really have any responsibilities, any sort of care to anything, and yeah, definitely. I mean, acts like a child sometimes.
He sure does. Very evident in the first episode. He does act like a child. Kind of.
Yeah, and so when we're introduced to Ricky, are you able to sort of tell us a bit about how he is presented, especially in comparison to Edward?
Well, Ricky is presented as really being very mature for his age. He rings the doorbell. He is in a uniform, so you know he's in some sort of a military school, and they even make a joke about him and the fact that his father looks at him and says, "What are you like in the military?" or something like that. But yes, so he is presented as the mature person. He also understands the conversations that are going on around him in regards to Edward's money, and the fact that his father does not have any at this time, based upon what his accountant is telling him.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think something to also think about too is we're also introduced to the other characters as well, to include Kate, which is Edward's personal secretary, and we're also introduced to two others, that being Leonard, the what's it? He's the attorney, if I remember correctly.
He's the lawyer. Yes.
Yeah, and then you also have Lou, who is the account manager.
Yes.
And so, how do you think that these characters sort of play into this episode, especially as it progresses?
Um, well, Lou plays into, and Lou is the character who does not continue with the show, but Lou plays into it because he's just presented as the person who they think knows Edward best in regards to money. And so Edward trusts him as he seems to trust everyone and realizes that Lou has taken, like I said, his money that's been given to him. But of course, Ricky has to help Edward to see that. Let's see, Leonard, the his lawyer, is introduced very well. You can tell that's someone who's worked with Edward for a long time, and he's obviously a regular because he's in the theme song.
Yeah, and speaking of theme songs, I know, of course, you are very big for theme songs. So, how does this rate on the scale of your theme songs?
My theme songs, let's give, we'll rate from 1 to 10. From 1 to 10, for me, it's probably a 9 because it is very recognizable. It is very catchy. You can sing along with it. It grows with the show. So for theme songs, I think I would give it a 9.
Yeah, like I would certainly agree. I really enjoy the theme song. Of course, this one being from the pilot episode only showcases, clips from the pilot. And so, even though there's not necessarily a lot to work with, it definitely is catchy and reels you in on day one.
It sure does. And another character, Brandon, that I'd like to talk about is really Derek, who's kind of introduced at the end. Derek is a character who, my thoughts are, I'm not quite sure if they intended for him to remain on the show, but he's one that stands out. And so he came along a little later. Derek is Ricky's friend, or quote unquote friend, anyway, from the military academy.
And I would argue that the way that he is presented is almost like a frenemy, where it's like we're friends in the sense that we're forced to be bunkmates and we're forced to be here. But in other words, I would probably never speak to you, but yet I will.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah, and so as we mentioned over the course of this episode, we realize that Lou, the business manager, is of course a fraud, and enough where the way that they even presented that he is a fraud is that not only does Ricky investigate it, which I would say that is, I think, a little bit of a highlight because it shows that he did that specifically to get recognition from his father. But in the way that, that Edward says, this is the last time, I deal with this type of circumstance. It's like, and after he begged me to hire him after his criminal record.
I know. I know. Very true. Very true.
But yeah, and so is there anything else that I think really stands out for you for this episode, or anything else that you'd like to highlight during this?
Well, one of the things I would like to highlight is that how true it actually remained after this particular episode. Some first episodes are just truly premieres, and they are, even though it appears as though they're going to talk, the series will be about one thing, sometimes it changes. This one truly is the son coming into his father's life and the influence he has, and he kind of helps his father to grow up at the same time.
Yeah, I think that is just such a great premise, and I think the pilot episode does such a great job with setting up the series. And you get to see a little bit of hints into each of the primary characters, and enough where you'd want to go back and invest your time into it.
Yep, I agree. Since I watched all the seasons, I totally agree.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, like I said, this is just the first of many, many of our shows that we're going to speak about to come. And I know right now we're focusing primarily on the first episodes, the pilot episodes, and everything in between.
Yes, we are.
But yeah, but like I said, this has been episode 1 of Silver Spoon's pilot, and it has been produced by Embassy Television.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, how has this been for you for number 1?
For number one, this has been great. I've been enjoying our conversation.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking forward to more every week.
The same here.
Yeah, well, until next time, everyone, have a wonderful day, and I'll see y'all later.
All right, bye bye.